All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Tipple's virtual wine tasting with Elizabeth and Jeff Beaudre from Tipple's Brews and Wines in Gainesville, Florida. Let's jump in. This week, we are drinking the Forbes Chardonnay from Yarra Valley.
I'm so glad I came back for this one.
Everyone's favorite. You know what? I think you will be pleased. I think you'll be surprised.
All right. Okay.
From Victoria, Australia. All right. If you've not already done so, go ahead and pop that bottle open and pour yourself a glass. Love that sound. We're going to talk about this enclosure during this night because Australia makes a strong statement about
Stuff with enclosures.
stuff and enclosures. Ye old screw top. There you go.
It's not what it used to be.
It is not, especially when you put a 94-point wine in it.
This is 94.
It is. So, all right, we poured a glass. Let's jump to the first slide, please. Oh,
Okay,
wait.
Paul already has a question. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, imagine that. Yeah, so white wines, red wines, we're talking about jumping right into it. Do red wines have to open up more than the white wines? I feel like I've asked this question before, but I want to ask it again. Are white wines easily drinkable early?
Yes,
Never be embarrassed about asking a question again. I do that all the time. So
exactly. And it's a good question. And yes, it is. White wines are almost universally ready to drink out of the bottle. Some of them can evolve some more and you can have some fun with it, but it's never to the same extent as reds.
why?
It's just intrinsic to the chemical character of the wine. you know.
Okay. So just like for some reason, red grapes make it so that,
A lot of it is tannin.
okay.
Right, and
Okay.
those deeper, richer flavors, right? So the chemical compounds that comprise those darker, more intense flavors,
Mhm.
but also largely tannin,
Okay.
need a minute with oxygen to kind of invigorate and they'll evolve more.
Okay.
Whereas because you don't have tannins and you have a lighter amount of the, the chemicals that make all the flavoring in a white wine, you have less for it to work with.
So do Italian reds need less time to open then since they're less tannic?
No, and don't forget that Italians have less sulfur,
Oh,
but
that's
not
right.
less tannin.
It's fewer sulfites. That's right.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, growing up, I always thought it was the tannins that gave my dad a migraine. It's not the tannins, it's the sulfites.
Yep.
Yes, it's hard to have a paradigm shift of something you grew
Right.
up.
Well,
with.
and
Yeah.
there's a very large discussion. Well, not so much a large discussion. It seems to be a very pointed scientific discussion where people are refuting the ability for sulfites to be the culprit.
So
and they're
what
saying
is it?
It's histamines produced. The red wines can produce more histamine than white
Okay.
wine.
I think Harriet has said that before,
Yeah,
that
so-
the red it's a histamine.
Yeah,
issue.
with its more intense, it's got more intensity,
Mhm.
right? And so it is more likely to produce in some people a histamine, therefore allergic reaction. Those histamines can cause inflammation,
Mhm.
whether it makes your nose stuffy or gives you a headache. I've read several scientific articles where they're saying it's much more likely that histamine is the cause of your issue
That's
than
interesting.
sulfites, because as one gentleman put it, he said that one slice of bread you had
Mhm.
while waiting for your dinner had many more sulfites in it than your glass of wine would ever
Okay.
have.
Okay.
And so
So Italian reds have fewer histamines.
they have fewer sulfites and it seems to work out. So
Okay.
that's the thing. So I like I said, I'm not saying I know all of it because this is still round
Okay.
and round discussion.
Yeah, I
Right?
think
Yeah.
we're still discussing it.
So
See, Paul, you do
Hey,
have
Jill.
a question.
I want to introduce Taja Fricker. First time at
hello.
the virtual wine tasting, okay?
All right. Welcome.
We hope you enjoy it.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Hopefully you'll come back, even though we're starting with a white,
Yeah. Hey, white
It's a
wine.
date with my father-in-law. My father-in-law.
That's fantastic.
Let's jump over to the first slide, please.
Okay, you
Thank
ready?
Mhm. Yeah, I did that because this part wasn't done yet, but you did have it up. So if you pull it up, it should work.
Okay, hold on just a moment, everyone. I just want to check the window real quick. That was what was showing.
Mhm.
And here we go.
Why did that happen?
I don't know. It signed us out of Google, so we just have to sign in again real quick. For no apparent reason.
Well, I will just interrupt it in and say, we actually opened ours early because we were having a fish dinner and we were like, we're not gonna wait to eat because we're feeding the kids too. And
Sure.
I was like, Barg Chardonnay, fine, I'll drink it. Ugh. So good. Like, it's not buttery at all,
Mhm.
which is always my thing. Like, I don't like when it just like sits on my tongue after, and I love like the crispness.
Yeah,
And I am never good at remembering like the names of different whites because I don't drink them very often, but I want to say it reminds me of like a Pinot Grigio more than a Chardonnay.
see that?
Okay, I
I
can,
feel like there's like more saltiness to it than I
nice, by
normally
the
get
way,
with the
good
Chardonnay.
call. Yes, that is part of what we're going to be
Okay.
talking about. So very awesome observations. I'm going to bring this back together. And when I tell you guys why, you're going to remember which wine it's going to remind you of.
Okay,
After I tell you the words, you're going to say, oh yeah, that wine.
okay, all right.
All right,
So you're gonna
this is a
see
good teaser.
behind the curtain a moment. Because it signed us out, so
All right, here we
there
go.
we go.
Back at it. So the Mac Forbes Chardonnay rating 94 points from Wine Enthusiast. This wasn't from some local newspaper or something, so big time on this guy. A great vintage from these guys. Pay no attention to the picture saying 2015. There's not what we're drinking.
What
It's
are we
just the one I was
drinking?
in, the
19,
19.
okay.
So food pairings, pasta and mussels and a creamy white wine sauce.
Sounds
That
good.
creamy sauce part of it, I mean, you could work with it with any Chardonnay, but the tartness of this guy, the extra
Mhm.
acid really helps. Sushi, Mediterranean spout stuffed peppers for the vegetarian version. Speckled trout and capers.
Would you eat that?
I would now.
Okay.
I've gotten over my caper
Your
aversion.
caper aversion?
Yes.
Okay,
I've come around. I mean, I'm not looking for capers, but I'll deal with it.
all right.
All right.
And we're having, I think it's called Italian wedding soup.
I think it's
this
an Italian
evening.
wedding soup. so
Yes,
That should
so,
work out nicely.
yes. And as you guys know, Tuesdays, my mother makes dinner for us, so it's always, it actually has been matching up. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been.
Except
been a
for, I think, 1 or 2 weeks, but, yep.
Okay, let's
Do you-
stop sharing.
Stop
from that.
sharing,
Mhm.
okay. I was gonna say, normally we stop before we move
Right.
on to the label, so.
All right, so this is 100% Chardonnay,
Oh.
12.5% alcohol. Aging potential on this guy with all that freshness, meant to be consumed in the first 5 years, but
Okay.
with that high acid and adequate alcohol on there, if you are so inclined and happen to be someone like me that kind of enjoys a white wine that's made for the purpose,
Mhm.
aging a little bit, this would age gracefully and go, you could take this one a little longer than most Chardonnays and it will age gracefully.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Julie that I would not have thought this was a Chardonnay.
Mhm.
If you just put it in front of me, blind tasting, I wouldn't have thought it was Chardonnay. Oh, that could be our next blind tasting. Is it Chardonnay?
Is it Chardonnay?
Right?
So, aging, like you guys have talked about, this isn't full of butterscotch, right?
Mhm.
Not full of butterscotch and vanilla notes and that kind of a thing. So that would be because of the oak barrel aging, right? So if you use young, aggressive, new barrels, you're going to get a lot of butterscotch, vanilla, toasted, toasted oak, and it kind of jumps on top of and covers up the wine.
Mhm.
That is the opposite of what this winemaker's style is. He is much more French in styling,
Okay,
which is why this wine reminds me more of a Chablis
okay.
than any other one. So there's the thing that it might remind you guys of. Remember when we had Chablis and you guys all talked about how it was fresh, there was
Right.
minerality and salinity.
Mhm.
And Elizabeth even said one of my favorite lines, which is, please stop calling it Chardonnay. You can just call it Chablis from now on, because then I'll let myself like it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Yes.
I have a bias against
Right.
anything called Chardonnay.
Right.
But this is 100%. Does Australia have, because we haven't been in Australia in a while, so I may have asked this before, but
Right.
do they have, I'm assuming, what is their minimum to call it, like, just to call it Chardonnay? Do you know, is it,
I don't know what they're,
okay? Because
and I
this is
don't know,
100%, but
right.
does it have to be?
No, it's a good question, and I don't know where their minimums are.
Okay,
Like, for example, in California, which is what she's talking about, in California, if a wine is 75% Cabernet Sauvignon and 25% something else, you can still call it a Cabernet Sauvignon.
you don't have to call it a blend.
You don't have to call it a blend.
Mhm.
Which is, I'm not saying that's good or bad, it just is what they do. I don't, and different countries have different amounts that you can do that with. Some areas it's 0, has to be all of it. So I don't know what it is in Australia, and I don't really know if it varies by sub-region
Okay,
in Australia.
where does it have to be all of it? France,
Well, there's some areas in the US, for example, yeah, like
Missouri?
Oregon.
Okay,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Huh,
So, yeah, Oregon's very, very strict. If you're calling it a Pinot, it's Pinot.
sorry, I was looking at the chat. Julie said she would even revisit this. That's
Uh-huh.
why I'm shocked.
All right, so.
Does
that's
anyone
fantastic.
taste or smell star fruit?
Love it. Yeah, let's talk about what you
Absolutely.
guys are smelling and tasting. Let's jump into it, right?
That was Linda.
Very nice. I love the star fruit option.
Technically, it might have been somebody in our family who smelled the star fruit, and I will leave it at
Wasn't
that.
me.
Either.
Oh.
But I like that. So green apple, I like the star fruit. There's definitely a lemony quality, lemon rind. And
Mhm,
white peach, so like a tart peach maybe.
mhm.
There is, like we said, on the finish, there's a salinity, you got a little saltiness going on. There's a nice minerality in there, which reminds me once again of Chablis. They're a very mineral-driven white wine. The minimal use of oak, in this case, it is in oak, but it's very older used oak that gives, it's very neutral.
It's not affecting it.
It's really not affecting a lot. Honestly, there is a bit of a richness, which you can get on here. That's because it's aged on the lees,
Okay,
right, for 11
do
months.
you want to explain the?
So the
leaves?
lees, as you take a wine, you crush it, you begin fermentation, it's a big hazy mess. Then you drain off the juice to get it off the skins and everything. You let everything fall out of solution again, you drain it off again. Now you have very, very fine particles of yeast and a little bit of what's left from the grape skins in there. And over time, they will make a very small amount, but a very fine layer on the bottom of the fermentation vessel. That's called the lees. And you leave it on there because it adds a little bit of richness without having to do it with oak.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, I'm gonna ask a really silly question. But you know how beer used to have to be clear?
Mhm.
Or else it was bad beer, but
Right.
now we have hazy beers.
Right.
Are there any hazy wines?
Yes,
Really?
I have one at the store
Really?
from Australia.
Oh, you've tasted it?
I've tasted it. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What kind of wine is it?
So it is a, why am I blanking on
Is
this?
it white or red?
It's a white.
Okay,
It's a white and it is the Zabibo. So
okay.
Zabibo is a grape from Sicily.
Mhm.
The winemaker, which we had his Syrah.
Okay,
The Syrah, remember the really funky Syrah that was aged in open vats that were clay pots,
oh, yes. Okay,
right? It
yeah,
was high
okay.
acid and tart, and it was very polarizing for the group. It was really, it's really, that one was way like, because the Smith Dowdall Smiths really liked it. But everyone else was kind of torn on it, right?
They
Because
like
it really
funky
needed,
wines.
yeah, it needed
Yeah.
some food with it and that kind of
Okay,
thing.
right.
So he makes this one.
Okay,
It is the same thing. It is hazy. You can see sediment in the bottom of the bottle. It's in the store.
Uh-huh.
And it's got this bright tartness, but also a funky farmhouse thing going on. It's almost like a white wine meets a Belgian sour.
Oh, you gotta bring one of those home because I'd like to try it.
Okay, yeah, because it is sour. And you were one of
I
the
like
ones that liked it.
sour,
You
yeah.
liked the Syrah because it reminded you of the
Yeah.
sours.
Yeah,
And so it's a truly, really interesting wine. So,
but again, I said, if you
But it
don't like
is-
sours, you will not.
but
like it.
yeah, but other than that, like I say, I have that one wine and I'm
Right.
the only one in Gainesville who carries that wine.
Okay.
All the other wines in Gainesville, I'm guessing, you can tell I may be wrong, will be clear. So it is a very rare wine that isn't clear.
Okay. Oh, I expected that answer to be no. Oh, yeah, Chris and Robin, next time they come in, they want you to point them to that wine.
Okay, you got it.
Okay, awesome.
Good old Zabibu.
Anything else people are smelling or tasting or
so-
questions before we move on to the label?
I think you kind of went over it a little bit earlier, but I am kind of still tasting a little bit of that butteriness, but it's like, it's so subdued that I kind of want to like keep going back to like taste it again. It makes me want to drink it more. It's like, I have barely tasted, you know, and I kind of like that.
Right. I'm going to give you a term to describe what you're going with, and I think it'll fit better than butteriness, creaminess. Because creaminess is also a mouthfeel thing, and it is
Sure.
both.
See, for me, I feel like I'm getting a hint of more of the butteriness on the nose, just a hint, than I do from the flavor, because I guess I'm tasting a lot more of the salinity than I am it's just, I can get what Brian's saying, but I feel like I'm experiencing that more in the nose, which isn't a creaminess.
Well, I'm going to tell you, on the nose, I'm getting a ton of minerals in there too. I mean, there's a clay quality on that nose.
Well, I'm not saying there
Yeah,
isn't. I'm just
yeah.
saying I feel like I'm.
No,
because
no, I was
don't
bringing it
feel
up
like it's
because-
very buttery.
Right.
So,
No,
yeah.
yeah.
So
And I was bringing the other up because we really hadn't discussed it.
the nose.
Mhm.
That's
Well,
true.
no, the minerality, the intense minerality in this wine. Whereas in Chablis, it's more of a chalky rock
Mhm.
minerality. This is more clay to me. It
So-
smells like clay.
Is that from the terroir?
Yes.
Or- Okay.
Yeah, this comes from directly, which we'll talk about as we get into it in a little bit, and I'll end up repeating this, right? But Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are wonderful at expressing the terroir that they're grown in, right? The combination of soil and the effect of the climate on them is strong.
Okay.
You get very different tasting wines, even though they all say Chardonnay. They're very flexible, that they can be grown in all those areas and still produce wine, but they're going to give you very different wine expressions of that grape.
Sure.
So, all right. All right, let's go to the next slide. We'll go through the labels.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look. As always, this part is, we're pretending you're in a wine store and it's not Tipple, so you're getting no help. And
So you're out of town.
you're out of town, that's right. And you're looking for, you're like, okay, I'm going to pick up a white wine to go with fish, right? And you're thinking, okay, what am I going to get? Well, this guy tells you right away, it's a Chardonnay. So if you're comfortable with Chardonnay or not, you would either jump on it or walk away at that point, like you step in for a closer look.
Mhm.
So Yarra Valley, it doesn't say Australia right on the
Mhm.
front label,
So
right?
you would have to know that Yarra Valley
You-
is in Australia unless it's on the back.
You would have to know, and honestly, you have to really, like, if you look on the back even, so produced by Mac Forbes Wines with the address in Healesville, Cooey Rook Road in Healesville, Vic, VIC. So once again, Australia not on there.
Right,
Right.
right.
So imported by Hudson, but by the way, they bring in some amazing Australian wines. Here it is, product of Australia. So
Okay.
you can finally get there.
It is pretty small
Right.
on there.
Yeah, so it's interesting because they don't give you a lot on here. You look in the back, 2019 Yarra Valley Chardonnay. That's
It seems like the Mac Forbes name,
Mhm.
they really, like, that's very much, I mean, it's not as prominent as Chardonnay, but it's very much prominent on the front and the back, so
right.
they're kind of relying on their
They're,
name.
they're going with a real simple look.
Mhm.
However, this is not an entry level price point for Chardonnay. If they don't give you a lot to go on, this guy is kind of relying on being in locations
Okay,
that they will tell you about the wine.
Okay.
Now, that makes sense because a lot of where this is served is smaller locations like us
Mhm.
and the fact that we serve in the store. So it's meant more for restaurant use and that kind of a thing. So it is relying a bit more on somebody with knowledge to tell you.
okay.
So.
It tends to be more of a restaurant wine then.
Yeah,
overall.
I'd say this
Mhm.
guy, that's where I would expect to see Mac Forbes
Okay.
normally.
And we have some chat, so let me see. Anyone else getting, oh wait, let me go back far enough. A lot of minerality. This is Kristen Robin, some stone granite.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the Montreals, anyone else get white pepper?
Oh, I like that call. I like that call very much. Good call on the subsets of secondary flavors.
Yeah,
And kind of a bright pop, you know, of that white pepper. I think that's exactly the right call.
I hadn't identified it yet, but after I just took a sip and rolled it around a little bit, did a little bit of that chewing of the wine first
Right.
before sipping. And yeah.
Yeah, it's
white
like
pepper.
you get a bright white pepper, and if you really roll it around your palate, you get much
Mhm.
more of that lemon zest, little,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
nice acid in there. Lychee, I can go there. I'm not against lychee on
Mhm.
that, yeah. Because there is this cool thing where it's a tart tropical, right? It's not a rich tropical. I'm
Mhm.
not going papaya and mango on this guy.
Yeah,
But these things where you get like almost because you talked about maybe you would misidentify it as a Sauv Blanc, because I could go gooseberry on this guy.
I thought we said Pinot Grigio, not Sauv Blanc.
Pinot Grigio, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can still go gooseberry. Pinot
Okay.
Grigio is very citrus,
Mhm.
so the citrus lemon
Yeah,
is
yeah.
much more than Pinot Grigio.
Mhm.
All right. Next slide, please. All right. Chardonnay is the queen. So, native to Burgundy, France. So let me see how I have my thing set up here. All right.
That's Jeff going through those so quickly,
that's right.
not me.
I wanted to get to the map.
I would.
We're
never-
going to go back. So Burgundy, this is the origin of Chardonnay, right? Green skinned, white pulped. Let's jump gently back up. So
was
Chardonnay
awesome.
flavors. So traditional, like overall blending of potential Chardonnay, and then we'll go to the next slide, which you guys all see why I put it in there. So we've got yellow apple, star fruits,
Mhm.
right? Pineapple, vanilla, not the case this time, and butter, not the case this time,
I mean,
right?
yeah, just a hint. Mhm.
Right. So you get down here, which is why I think of it as much more like Chablis. Quince, so that tart green apple kind of thing
Sure,
with a little
yeah.
pear, star fruit again,
Mhm.
lime peel. In this case, I would go more lemon, white flowers and chalk. Let's go with the other minerality we talked about. To me, this one lines much closer up with the
Mhm.
Chablis style specifically.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason it had such a great rating and such. I think it's a very classy version of Chardonnay,
Mhm.
fantastic for food pairings, and it's had us talking a lot for a
Right.
white wine. Think about how long we've been talking about different flavors.
that's
of Chardonnay.
true. Yeah, normally
It's
it's not
complexity.
nearly as complex
Mhm.
as a red.
So in that one, you have medium high acidity,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
ABVs right in the exact same range. Light body, bone dry, absolutely across the board. Much closer to line up to Chablis,
Absolutely. So, and then this is 12.5%.
12 and a half. Mhm.
So we're right in the middle of that Chablis.
Right.
I don't remember what the Chardonnay was.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So this winemaker, by the way, he makes it in very French styling too, with minimal intervention.
Mhm.
Gives the vines all the support they need, but lets them lead the way,
Okay.
lead him and how
Mhm.
it's going to grow vintage to vintage.
I was just gonna ask, so you're not necessarily getting the same taste from vintage to vintage because it's expressing whatever happened that year.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the last vintage, for example, is a full percent lower alcohol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I happened to come across that.
Okay,
while I
well, I'm
was
glad we have this
working
one
on
then.
this. All right, regional differences in Chardonnay. And like I talked about, Chardonnay, right? Flexible wine grown all around the world, and it grows differently depending on where it is being grown. It has a lot of variation in what can happen. It is, so here we have, like the one that we tend to think about is the California, heavily oaked,
Mhm.
a deep yellow, right?
Yeah,
Then you have the Meursault from Burgundy, France, and Northern Italian, heavily oaked with a little more age on it.
Mhm.
Gets a little more tan in color.
Mhm.
You're still getting those butterscotch notes, rich. See, the scale here is rich to
Sure.
light. So, and then you head over here to Chablis, more on the light side, a little bit richer. And then here you have unoaked Chardonnays with no oak at all. Now, this is not unoaked, right?
Mhm.
So it's actually
It's
closer to
minimally
here,
oaked. Okay,
but it kind of sits on the border,
okay.
for me.
So yeah, looking at the color specifically,
Mhm.
I would have thought it was Pinot Grigio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just the
it
color.
is. It is
I wouldn't-
bright.
Yeah, it's so
Clear and
white
crystal.
and clear. Because, I mean, clearly it's not as yellow as that looks like, but it is a much yellowier color. What I think of traditionally as Chardonnay, because you're right. I think Americans, for the most part, you hear Chardonnay, you think California Chardonnay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now Oregonian is more my thing, but I mean, I can go for, as we had that time, remember, with the right food pairing, a buttery oaky chard is a wonderful thing.
With the right food pairing, yes.
And for some people,
It
without
worked.
that food
It-
pairing,
well-
some people just love it.
For some people,
That's right. All right.
I would revisit this one.
That's
I'm
fair.
enjoying this one. I would not have thought it was Chardonnay. Yeah.
Well,
Mhm. I know it is.
All right.
It says it right
Says it
there,
right
really
there,
big.
really. All right, so Chardonnay is also the most grown white grape in the world for wine production. So most popular wine grapes in the world, you know, with how much they're grown, right? Cab is king. We always say that, and Merlot is right after, which may surprise people with all the, you know, how much
With all
they
the
was
negativity.
maligned. But it's coming back, and B, it's blended all the time.
Okay.
But so you have Aaron here.
Mhm.
That is a white grape, but it's used for not Burgundy production, for
A specific kind of wine?
for being distilled into brandy.
Spirits?
Thank you,
Okay.
brandy. So Aaron is turned into brandy, right?
Okay.
So there's some a little bit that is
Mhm.
used. We have one in the store once in a while.
Mhm.
For wine production, but really it's a brandy production. So that doesn't count.
Okay.
Chardonnay is the queen of white
Well,
wine.
when you said it and then you pulled this graph, I was like, did you say the one or the one?
Yeah, I wanted to explain.
Okay, you
Yeah.
needed to.
Yeah. So then you go down to Sauv Blanc and
Mhm.
then Trebbiano of all things,
Okay.
right? I
Yeah.
guess I probably need to throw Trebbiano on the list
Probably,
here too.
probably.
So I thought that was interesting, fun to look at.
Yeah.
So,
Writing down Trebbiano.
yeah,
You do need to write it down, otherwise you'll have seen Ramona and it'll just be gone.
right.
Mhm.
All right. That'll be after the one that I've already picked.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, you said you'd picked through October, right?
I'm midway through October now. Yeah, so the Trebbiano might have to wait till the end of October, early November.
Okay,
All right, next one. All right. Aussies love screw caps, right? So I thought we'd go through the whole thing. So we cracked that open. I love that sound.
well, it's very easy too, because if you don't have a wine opener,
Right?
this is perfect.
It is easy. It is very stable
Mhm,
in that it's not going to infect your wine
mhm.
like cork can. So what is the love affair with Australians and Stelvin enclosures? Because they've really been a powerful force in moving forward with the fact that just because it's in a Stelvin enclosure doesn't mean it's a cheap wine.
Right, and that's, I mean, a relatively new concept.
Yeah, it is relatively new.
Yeah.
So even they began using them didn't begin using Stelvin enclosures, screw tops until 2000, not extensively.
Okay, that's not new anymore.
You know, it's 22 years ago
Yeah.
now, but still. In the world of wine production, right? Especially because they began creating screw tops in the 70s, right? So it was really getting very little traction
Mhm,
in being used for anything of any quality.
mhm.
But then the Australians were dealing with the fact that almost all of the world's cork comes from Portugal.
Okay,
And so all the really good corks were being bought in Europe.
sure, that makes
Portugal's
sense.
in Europe.
Yeah.
So they were getting secondary quality corks, and because of that, they were getting a lot more corks that would fail or be infected. So cork taint
Mhm,
means that's when you get a cork with a little bit of fungus left in it,
mm.
and it gets into your wine and
Sure.
goes to town.
So they were losing a lot of product.
They were losing a lot of products because of it, and they were sick of it. So now, so they ran some testing with natural cork, synthetic cork, screw tops. They ran it through to see what the effect was. There were changes in the flavor, but generally what this preserved was what they wanted to present anyway. And according to their research and several others, though some people still refute it, I think that the people refuting the fact that wine can age in a screw top are just repeating old data.
Okay,
I'm putting it out there. I've read enough of it. It ages.
so you don't even need a synthetic cork because it still breathes through the synthetic.
Right, it'll
cork,
breathe through
right?
synthetics are really a good
'Cause I
option as
know for
well.
whites, it doesn't matter as much, but for reds,
Right.
it,
I would still look, even I'm gonna be more comfortable with an expensive red that I'm gonna age over time, being in cork or synthetic.
Okay, but something you're gonna drink right away.
If I'm gonna drink it within a couple years,
matter.
what do I care? Yeah,
Okay.
no, it doesn't need it. It'll be fine.
Mhm.
And almost all wine is consumed within 30 minutes of purchase. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, that's the industry stat, right? In the US.
Just on your way home, if you have a Stelvin enclosure, it's real easy to open while you're driving home.
See? No one do that. But yes.
Tipples does not endorse these
No,
statements.
no. But yes, the statistic is that like 90% of all wine purchased in the US is consumed within 30 minutes. Yeah,
Okay,
or at least popped open, right?
okay,
Because you buy it, you go home, you open it, you're having dinner, boom.
right.
So, yeah, it's almost none of it's aged anyway. If you are going to age, and there is, so today, 98% of all wine produced in Australia is Stelvin enclosure. Right?
That's a lot.
Yeah, no,
I
like-
didn't think you were gonna say it was that high. I was thinking maybe like 60%,
Right,
which still would be a lot.
right. It would be.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, they are seriously like the kings of the
They
spring.
have
wine.
embraced this.
Now, they do have some, like, why not? What's with the last 2%? Mostly it's really high-end wines,
Mhm.
and it's more of a marketing choice, because if you're gonna
Okay.
plop down $400 or $500 for a bottle of wine,
Sure.
you kind of want a cork. It's just,
Okay.
it just feels right,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have to work to get into the bottle a little bit more, maybe, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, now that we've expressed that just because you have a screw top doesn't mean it's a cheap wine. Okay.
Right.
Dr. Pricker wants to know about box wines.
A box. All right, I will tell you about box wine. You know what? I love that. I would.
No,
I'm
it's
glad.
actually a good question because,
All right, now, box wines are different in that your wine will not age,
Mhm,
right? But it is an incredible preservation, right?
okay.
So if you put your wine in there and you're not going to age the wine,
Mhm.
you could put a really good wine on there, in there. So let's say you can take this guy.
Does
This is,
anyone do-
no,
Okay.
no, they don't. And most of that's marketing, but
Well,
so box wine, because you put it into this plastic bag,
Mhm.
it's a very inert plastic bag. It's made special, so it doesn't taste like plastic.
okay,
Doesn't, the wine won't. pick
right,
up the
right,
taste.
I got it.
And every time you pour it, the bag is squeezing tighter. It's just it's the pressure of our Earth's atmosphere just pushing on it, right? As you,
Mhm.
release some. So air never goes backflow into it. So
Okay,
you can use the same box wine for months. So if you were just drinking a glass a night and you wanted a good bottle, a good glass of wine, it actually would make sense to do it that way.
but nobody's doing.
But nobody's
that.
doing, yeah.
Okay.
They're putting in mediocre wine.
I mean, you can see that maybe people
less.
are going to adapt to Stelvin enclosures, especially
Right.
since 98% of an entire continent is doing it. But I don't know that box is
Yeah, I think,
ever gonna make it there.
I think people may be surprised that I don't hate on the box wine, but as a device, I think it's pretty cool.
Okay,
In
but Yeah.
application, there's very little box wine that I'm a fan of. There's some that's drinkable.
it's drinkable.
It's drinkable.
I mean, late in the night after you've had a couple bottles of good wine.
Yeah, that's right.
you
You know
know.
what? There's nothing wrong with it. Exactly.
Okay.
Hey, drinkable wine has its place. Not everything's going to be a 94-point Chardonnay, right? Yeah.
No, that is true. I just imagine like labels around the store, drinkable.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, right. It's drinkable.
it's drinkable.
That's right. You won't hate me for it. So despite the example of the Aussies,
Mhm.
more than 70% of the world's wine today still cork.
Mm.
Yeah. So outside of Australia, it falls off precipitously.
So what that says to me is if I'm going into a wine shop where I'm not going to get any help and I'm going in blind, I'm okay with finding, I like Australian wine, so I'm okay with, I find an Australian wine, it has a Stelvin enclosure. But I'm probably going to shy away from other Stelvin enclosures if I'm not getting any help, because I know that most of the rest of the world isn't using it. So because they aren't using, I'm just going to shy away as a lay person.
No,
If
you're
I'm
totally
not
right.
getting
Yeah.
expert help.
You're right. If you're not getting any help to see
Mhm.
past it, right? Because there's some areas like, Oregon, once again,
Mhm.
actually plays around with stealth enclosures,
Okay.
right? But if you don't have someone to help you find out, you're
Right.
right. Usually, sadly enough,
Mhm.
usually a stealth enclosure would mean a lower quality.
Okay,
You're right.
Yeah.
Not always.
that, I think it's interesting because you've mentioned Oregon a lot in conjunction with Australia. So do they tend to mirror one another with
Well,
things?
What's interesting about them is Oregon has some really, really strong rules. They really care about their winemaking. And the other thing that's interesting is Oregon, for me, I've always said Oregon is like the US meets France,
Okay,
right? Because of their wine style.
Okay.
They don't do heavily oaked wines. They have amazing Pinot and Chardonnay. So a lot of Pinot Noir Chardonnay drinkers can have a hard time jumping to Burgundy.
Mhm.
Burgundy is a very specific, much tartar style, a lot more minerality, that kind of a thing. It's a very elegant, but it's kind of a learning curve to get up
Okay.
there, right?
Mhm.
Oregon sits in the middle.
okay,
So California to France, Oregon's in the middle. But who else is in the middle? Actually, Australia is kind of that way
Okay.
too.
so if you're evolving from California wines, go Oregon, go Australia before
Mhm.
going to
Yeah,
France.
good Australia. I mean, because there's some bad
Well, sure,
Australian
I'm
out
sure
there.
there's bad Oregon too.
Not
No?
as much.
Really?
Yeah, not as much.
Okay, wait, we have a chat.
Okay.
If you cook a lot, box wine is great.
Yeah. No, exactly. You keep
Yeah.
one in there and use it because it'll last forever.
Mhm. Yeah, but absolutely.
Yeah, little for the pan, a little for your glass, a drinkable wine. It's a great way to go.
There you go.
Probably something I should consider.
I mean, you just listed cooking wine.
Right.
Next.
Yeah, let me make sure I've gone through all
Okay.
my stuff and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, okay, and I talked about how on the higher end ones, there are a few, that 2%, but they use it basically as a marketing thing,
Sure.
so.
Ready?
Okay, yep. All right, grape anatomy. So I mentioned earlier, this is a green skinned grape with white flesh. A lot of acidity retained in here. It is a white grape, so it's not going to have as thick a skin. It's a thinner skin. Obviously, it picks up a lot of flavors and throws it into that peripheral zone from the soil.
Okay.
So because it is an expressive grape.
Mhm.
If it's grown in a hurry in California in a very warm environment, it will get very fruity and tropical.
Okay.
When it's grown cooler with more minerality, you get minerality in apples, pears, lemon. It can have such a variety.
Okay.
So
Fruity and tropical as in like pineapple.
it can be overripe pineapple with mango with a ton of
Oh, that's right. And you
butterscotch
said
if
like
you're in
papaya or
California.
something
Yeah.
too. Okay.
All right. So where in the world are we? We are way down here, but it's really midway.
In as far as the latitude goes.
Yeah, as far as the southern growing latitude, it's in the middle,
Mhm.
right? We're down here. We're in Victoria. We spent last couple of times we were in Australia, we were in South Australia
Mhm.
up here. This time we're in Victoria.
Didn't you say you're gonna go to Tasmania at some point?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
we'll drink Tasmania.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good reminder. I actually have a really good one.
You write another note to yourself.
Yep, and Tasmanian
It's all about teas tonight. Trebbiano,
Pinot
Tasmania.
Noir.
All right. Specifically Tasmania Pinot Noir.
Mhm.
So you have one in mind already.
Oh, yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Next.
Yes. All right. So here we are at the southern point here in Victoria. Yarra Valley's up here in the mountains a bit. So we're dealing with a combination of maritime influence. Mediterranean's nowhere near here. The maritime influence
Mhm.
along with elevation.
Okay.
And that's why it works really well for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. But what's interesting is Yarra in general,
Mhm.
it's this area that grows, they grow everything from Cabernet Sauvignon down over here and Shiraz, Syrah, to the more elegant versions up here. Pinot Noir and Chardonnay never usually don't grow anywhere near
Yeah.
where you're growing Cabernet Sauvignon, but they're both in the same wine region. It's a real varied wine region. It's really cool.
It's very cool.
Mhm.
Although every time you say Yara, I think of Game of Thrones. Wasn't that what's his face's sister's name? I think it was Yara. I'm gonna look it up later.
Okay. The Yarra Valley is the oldest of the Victoria wine sub designation.
Okay.
All right. Tremendous variety. Soils vary greatly too. So you go from red volcanic clay
Mhm.
to sandy gray clay.
Okay,
so,
that's very different.
Yeah, so you get a lot of different varieties in there. So the red volcanic, you're going to get a lot more minerality coming through. The sandy clay, you're going to get a little more austere and have a little bit less of that push on its effect being bold
Okay.
for minerality, but it's still nice and dry and fast, draining. And then I talked about all the different grapes already that they grow in here. So let's move
Next.
on. Mhm.
All right.
All right, so I love my slides from when we were in Australia, so I had to use them again. Right? Australian wine.
Okay, wait, we have a couple of chats, so let's see. In the Theon's sister in the book, yes.
There we go.
Wait, no, the show Yara, I think, is it not Yara in the books too? Because we read the books and then we watched
Right, I think
the
it's the
show, but,
They changed the name because it sounded too similar to other characters.
oh, okay. So, and we did watch the show more recently than we
Right.
read the books, so,
That's true.
thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. So, all right, Australian wine. They give it to kangaroos, clearly.
Yep,
That's
there you go. You're gonna go box a kangaroo, give him some wine first, maybe slow him down. Or make him pass out.
right. Is that shrimp down there for? I can't tell.
I can't tell what that is there, but he's got some cigarettes and some other alcohol there. Jeff just loves finding memes for.
I love these. I
Australia.
love Australian wine
There
so
you go.
much. All right.
Should I go to next?
Yes.
And your Saturday Night
I
Live
sounded in life, right? I mean, this,
GIF here.
I don't know why I go anywhere other than Australia because
Because you could just use these every
I
time.
just use these every time.
Yeah.
And you guys might get tired of them, but I will be amused and that's all that I care about in the end.
There you go.
Okay. So here we are, Yarra Valley. There, gorgeous area.
Gorgeous.
Shocking, right?
Mhm.
Low humidity, moderate temperatures, just gorgeous place. And actually I got caught up. on
Wait,
things.
go back a moment. I love how the buildings like built into that hill. So are they creating, do they have I mean, I'm assuming, do Australians have basements like Europe does?
Well,
Because we don't have basements in Florida, so,
I'm sure they can here
foreign
because they're up
concept.
in the, up
yeah,
in the mountains. But
I mean, so maybe that cools it down and they can kind of have like a cellar
Yeah.
temperature.
see-
I don't
see.
know.
I would think so, but don't know for sure. We have to go.
Yeah, we'll just need to go and check it out.
Right.
Lavender,
Lavender. You know what I like about this? This is like Napa Valley. It
Mhm.
looks like Napa Valley,
it does.
So-
Mhm. Yeah, with the lavender fields right there
Mhm.
next to the
right?
grape vineyards.
All right, so Mac Forbes a whiner. He likes dogs.
He has a
That's
big
my-
black dog, like we have a big black dog.
That is true.
Mhm.
Founded in 2004. He is intentionally involved in customizing the grape growing with each one of, he has a collection, instead of one big connected to his winery area,
Mm-hmm.
he grabs them from all over Yarra in these different subclimates that he
Okay.
wants to produce a certain style.
So he's a negotiant.
He's a negotiant and has complete control, but I couldn't see is whether he actually owns some of them.
Okay.
But on some of them, they grow the way he says, very directly.
Mhm.
So he has control of everything.
Right.
But some of them, some of the single varietal areas, he's taken over. I don't think he owns the land because they didn't say that it was a state,
Okay.
but I believe he has 100% only his people work the land.
Oh, okay.
So he's basically renting
He's
the land
renting
and
the
doing
land,
all the
yeah.
work, right?
That's very.
That's
cool.
my best guess because they didn't call it a state. And
Okay.
there's got to be a reason for that.
Yeah.
right? He describes his relationship with his vineyards as codependent in a good way. He's like, it doesn't have to be bad. So he wants to guide his vineyards toward the best production they can give without forcing it.
Sure.
And he actually gave up irrigation.
I was just going to ask about the irrigation,
Yep.
so,
So it's now dry farmed, which is what they do in France.
wow.
And so, and he's moving toward, it's not not official, but he's basically organic and sustainable. And he's doing that because he believes that it's creating a more robust biodiversity in his vineyards. and that is going to help his vineyards continue to produce during the stresses of climate change that are coming.
Okay, yeah.
So he believes it just makes good sense
sure.
in addition to making good wine.
Mhm.
Now, because he is guiding and not forcing
Mhm.
his vineyards, right? You got to deal with the fact there's going to be variations
Sure.
in ratings year to year. This was a
Mm.
particularly good year.
Mhm.
And like I said, the 2020, which was a full percent less alcohol, but it doesn't mean it was a worse wine. It's probably going to have even more acid in it
Okay.
because they're going to be a little less ripe.
Sure.
So, and interesting, one of his things that he noted, and like he has all these kind of on his website, these little interesting facts that he had year to year.
Mhm.
He has several years listed where lost this vineyard to phylloxera,
Oh,
lost this
really?
vineyard to phylloxera. So that makes me think that up in the mountains there, they must not
not
be using
grafting?
grafted vines.
Huh.
Yeah, which once again was not explicitly stated. It's one of those things where I'm
Right.
extrapolating, because why would you lose it to phylloxera if you were using grafted vine?
Because grafted vines absolutely are not lost to phylloxera,
Mm-mm.
period. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting that I wonder why the choice, because France is all grafted wines.
Yeah.
vines,
Oh, yeah, they
right?
have to.
So I mean, he's making a lot of
I-
French decisions, but
Right, I think it's probably because he could, right?
Okay.
It wasn't there yet, and
Sure,
then this
sure.
infection is moving. Most likely someone, maybe not him, or maybe him replanting after they died, are going to reclaim that. There's no
Okay.
reason to give it up forever.
sure.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But by the way, not a large wine producer here. We're not talking about a big winery. Now these are his.
I really love it when we get from smaller wineries that are not in the United States.
Mm.
I think it's really cool that we can get a smaller winery from halfway across the globe.
I agree.
Mhm.
It's amazing that can happen.
Yeah.
So these are his, this is one of his vineyards
Okay.
specifically.
It's always interesting too to see, because they're so tall, I'm assuming he's got them on, what's it called when they're on lines?
Trellises?
Yeah, they're on trellises.
Mhm.
And then you see the choices between the different vineyards
Mhm.
or the different winemakers, how they're like choosing to have the negotiants grow or whatever.
Right.
And sometimes they just leave them in little bushes.
Yeah, the mounds.
Mhm. And then sometimes they trellis them.
Yeah,
It's
and I'd
interesting.
say by far the most common in the world is trellising,
Mhm.
but it's not the only way,
Mhm.
not at all.
Next.
Yep. So there's his barrel room, and
Mhm.
then here is his one little wine. That's like, you can see, it's like, this is just, it's almost like a brewery,
Yeah,
like
I
in the
mean-
way it's very simple. I want to go in there and I want to drink and I want to talk to Mac Forbes about his wine,
Yeah, that's awesome that he's so small and he's 94-point wine. I
right?
mean, yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
It does. You could see like, instead of it saying wine room, it could say brew room or something, like you would expect, yeah, it's easily a brewery or, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Next one. All right, so let's stop the share.
Okay.
Now that I've run through the whole spiel, any additional thoughts that occurred to you while I was doing all that talking?
I know you all compared it to a Pinot Grigio a bunch. It really reminds me of an Albarino, especially with kind of the like minerality and salinity and lemony kind of taste to it. And we had shrimp tonight, and I think it went really well with it, which I would maybe not normally pair that with a Chardonnay, but it went very well with this one.
I like the call. I think
Yeah.
that is a very good point, Robin.
Yeah, I could see definitely with the lemony
Mhm.
quality to
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
to go
because-
with that shrimp.
Mhm.
Mhm. And salinity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that lemony, the salinity is
Mhm.
very much regularly a part of Spanish wine.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Especially Albarino.
Mhm.
So that was a great call. Anything else?
Any other questions, comments?
All right, well, let's get down to my spiel on ratings. Take them under advisement. Don't take them as gospel, right? So ratings on this guy, somebody felt this guy at Wine Enthusiast was an outstanding wine of superior character and style. Does this guy have character? Well, we've had a lot to say about it, right?
Sure.
So, and it's one of those where 90 plus, if it's a good wine at all, is it well made? Is it, and does it have a little more extra to say, right? Would that put it into the 90 plus? Is it a very good wine? Hey, that's a delicious wine. I like it. It was good. It made me happy. It could be in that rating level. That'd be fine. Is it a classic wine? Hey, that is truly something special. And, I'm going to revisit that for special occasions kind of thing. So
I was gonna say, I really like the slide with the 4 different quadrants of showing us, okay, this is how, an Australian wine is, this is how California wine is, this is how French wine is, like going through those different things. Because for me, I know one of the things that we talk about is, does it express the kind of grape, like in a dog show? Is it showing?
oh, right.
Is it showing what it's supposed to show for this grape? And for me, because it doesn't taste like a Chardonnay, I would think, well, okay, maybe I need to mark that down. But looking at that slide and seeing, okay, this is how it's expressed in these different areas, clarified it for me, because I really like this. I would not say it was a Chardonnay because I like it. So I would have marked it down saying, okay, but it doesn't taste like a Chardonnay, so maybe it should be marked down. But seeing that slide, I think that was a good slide to show, because I guess you said it's such an expressive grape,
Right.
that it can express all these different things. Do they have one of those for Cabernet Sauvignon too, since it's so expressive as well?
No, not so much, but Pinot would be more expressive.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
But, and once again, thank you, Wine Folly. Their stuff is amazing.
yeah, there you go.
Go
Okay,
check them out.
we have 7 scores in the chat already,
All right,
so let
let's
me go
see what
back.
we have.
Okay. Paul says an 89, Chris says a 92, Robin a 93. What can I say? It's great.
Nice.
89 from Consuelo. For a Chard, Julie gives it a 93.
Huh.
Overall an 89. Brian gives it a 93 because we paired it so well.
Nice.
Brenda 89. I think it's the salty salinity that keeps me from rating it higher.
Yeah.
Dr. Fricker 91, I would buy again.
Nice.
Linda 90, like so many, I'm not a Chard fan, but I like this one. Yeah. So see, I would be a 93 because I actually asked for a second glass of this.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to me, it affects. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'd go higher on this one. Mhm.
Great. I'm glad. That's fantastic. Yeah, I could see an easy, like, all right, this is well made. It's not overly oaked, so
Mhm.
it's got a great specific style and
Yeah.
it's killing it for that. So that's like, puts me in the, oh, here we go. the
Well,
Montreal.
they have a big group
That's right.
at the Montreal's table. So 4 people, 90, 4 people say 90, 192, 193, 94. So
Fantastic.
93.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's for one of those, like I say, where Chardonnay can be one of those grapes that I appreciate
Mhm.
more than I gravitate towards,
Sure,
right, for my own
sure.
personal drinking. I think it's a very well-made wine. It has a ton of character.
Mhm.
And an incredible food pairing wine too, which I like the kick of the minerality
Yeah.
and the salinity in there to go with food, which
Mhm.
I'm sure I'm going to enjoy in a few minutes here. So for that, I would give that 90 plus rating. I see it. I think it's earned it all day long.
Yeah.
So. Excellent. Thank you, guys. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Let's go to thank our sponsors.
Everyone enjoyed it, but everyone is hoping that next week is a red. Just saying.
We shall see.
And Julie's raising her hand. Yes. All right.
All right. So, let's thank you. We
wow.
have lots of sources this
Mhm.
week. So Wine Folly always, 750.com, Wikipedia, wine.com, Winearist magazine, Saturday Night Live, Yarra Valley, Point, Timeout, Duplin Winery. Some of these are, photographs.
Sure.
MacForbes.com, The Weekend Edition, and Fortune Magazine.
We went to a lot of different sources for this one. Wow. Good for you.
I put in a lot of work.
That. Aw.
I know. I hope everyone agrees. You're welcome, everybody.
All right, so this is the wine next.
All right, yes. So next week's Vino is we're heading from the southeastern extreme of
Mhm.
wine growing to the northwestern extreme of wine growing.
Okay,
We're going to Washington State. And we're going to be drinking from a winery that is a very large winery, right?
okay,
So they make a lot of things you're going to see in the supermarket, but they also make single varietal, really nice things that you don't see nearly as much.
okay.
And so I love finding those. I've actually have a Clos du Bois that was a single, like a single sourced
Mhm.
creation that was delicious that I've had in the store and
Okay.
have in the store right now too.
Okay.
So while you wouldn't see Chateau Saint Michel for their more common things, not that they're bad, they're just not normally our thing.
Right,
This Canoe Ridge Estate is a single vineyard, estate grown higher end version of their Merlot. So it's definitely worth drinking. We're gonna go drink some delicious freaking Merlot. The number 2 red wine grown in the world.
That's right.
We just talked about it
as a
today.
blending grape.
That's right. Well, and by itself. So, anyway, beef Wellington, crispy duck pancakes, caramelized vegetables all work great with Washington State Merlot.
Those crispy duck pancakes, that's all you.
Oh, it's all
Yeah,
me.
I mean, I would
If I
eat
can-
them too, but
If
I
can-
know you
yeah,
love
if I can
duck.
eat duck, I'm gonna eat duck.
Yeah, okay, so let's look at some chat.
Yeah.
Okay,
Salty meats.
good, this goes well with salty
That makes
meats, yeah,
sense.
absolutely, and then they were just there last Monday.
Oh, right.
That's amazing, okay, so you need to share some of your pictures.
Oh, yeah,
Send Jeff some pictures, he'll put them in the slideshow.
that's right.
Mhm.
So, awesome.
Okay.
Well,
I'll stop the share.
stop the share. That is my story for the night and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, before we stop the recording, do you have any questions, comments about this wine?
All right.
All right, I'll stop the recording. Cheers,
Well,
everyone.
cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us.